FBI was kept out for the first 4 days. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos, according to the FBI director, held the FBI resources back for 4 whole days. And Ed, as you and I know as investigators, the first 24 to 48 hours are crucial. Not just only the crime scene, blunders and mistakes, the decisions that get made in that first 24 to 48 hours are crucial. And we can't overemphasize that enough.
Well, nearly 100 days into the search for Nancy Guthrie, and the Pima County Sheriff's Department doesn't have a single suspect. And now FBI Director Kash Patel says Sheriff Nanos and his department forced the feds onto the sidelines during the case's most crucial moments.
I knew from my sources they were trying to keep you guys out.
They did. Here's how
time matters in an investigation.
The first 48 hours of anyone's disappearance are the most critical.
Patel tells Sean Hannity that the Pima County, Arizona Sheriff's Department waited too long to engage the FBI.
We're here to help. What do you need? What can we do? And for 4 days, we were kept out of the investigation.
Nancy Guthrie was reported missing on Sunday, February 1st. However, the Pima County Sheriff said they called the FBI 1 day later on Monday.
That morning, it wasn't days later that we contacted that morning, we contacted the FBI.
And that Tuesday, the sheriff and a Tucson-based FBI official held a joint press conference. The director praises the Bureau for the biggest lead in the case.
When we were finally let in, Sean, look what we did. We went in and got the Ring doorbell, and we said, hey, is anyone talking to Google?
The FBI contacted Google, and they recovered those chilling images from the door camera system.
That's why you have that image, because the FBI worked with Google to put that image out.
That suspect remains unidentified 3 months later. The director also cited differences over handling DNA evidence. Pima County chose a Florida lab it regularly used.
We would have analyzed it within days and maybe gotten better information or more information. Our lab's just better than any other private lab out there. And we didn't get a chance to do that. So,
yeah, we knew a little bit of this, Katie, but I had no idea some of these details. When Patel spoke with Sean Hannity, he said that they were essentially kept out of the Nancy Guthrie investigation. The FBI was for the first 4 days. The first 4 days, they wouldn't involve the FBI. You know how important the first.
I hate to stop these things, but I always have to do this because I want the people who are watching to get this into perspective here. Kash Patel, the FBI director, said for the first 4 days, you heard it right there on Sean Hannity's podcast, February 2nd of 2026, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos had his first press conference. And Ed, at that first press conference was one member of the service in plain clothes, and that was the homicide detective sergeant. Very, very brand new in rank of sergeant, and also never investigated a homicide. And
there are concerns at the house that concerned us from the early on part of this investigation, and that's all I will tell you. Yes, ma'am. You know, our investigative team has looked into all of those things, and that is not anybody else, though, that we've asked for help from, whether it's the FBI, they would gladly give it. I've heard from leadership from all sorts of agencies, not just at the federal level, but across the state. Every one of them saying, Sheriff, you need anything, we're here.
On the 5th, the FBI shows up at the press conference, at the second press conference. There was 2 agents of the FBI out with the sheriff. So it's no coincidence. And, you know, a lot of people are trying to twist this whole thing. I don't care whose side you're on with your political views. It's not about that with us. It's about the facts, and we know the history of this man right here, and it's not a good history when as it pertains to the FBI.
In that first press conference, there was no FBI to be found. How quickly did they close the crime scene? There was no FBI that went to the crime scene to assist. There was no agents that I saw canvassing the neighborhood in those first crucial 48 hours and 4 days. It was only until the second press conference?
4 days? It was 4 days.
And then the FBI showed up at the second press conference.
The other thing is, and I had no idea about this until Director Patel said this today, that they had an airplane. The FBI had an airplane in Arizona on standby, ready to take the DNA from the Nancy Guthrie crime scene back to Quantico so that it could be tested. And we now know that this was a hair strand, a very important hair strand that was found inside the house. But the sheriff decided not to send that DNA to the FBI lab, instead to send it to their private lab in Florida. In fact, the FBI didn't even get that hair strand until a couple of weeks ago. We knew there was frustration about that, but we had no idea. The FBI actually had a plane on the ground ready to go, and the sheriff just ignored them.
First off, the plane, how critical is that? And there's no way in hell that Chris Nanos didn't know that the FBI had a plane and all of those resources available to him, because I guarantee you that the agent in charge conveyed the message of the FBI director. If the FBI director claimed that he was sending hundreds of FBI personnel down into Tucson, there's just no way that the sheriff did not know what was available to him and how important would it have been to get that hair strand into the pipelines. He said it would only take 4 or 5 days to get an answer on some of the things that.
So this is critical. I mean, they could have gotten that hair to the FBI lab as soon as possible, because that plane was standing by. And they would have looked at it under a microscope, seen that there was no bulb attached to it, and then realized, okay, they can't handle this, and they could have sent it to the lab in California immediately to have them work up that hair. Okay. Instead, it took how many days before the lab in Florida, who wasn't successful with the hair, sent it to the FBI, who has to now send it to the California lab. So you have all this delay, needless delay. And the FBI wasn't going to charge them for flying that hair sample out to their laboratory. They probably weren't going to charge them for the lab analysis or any of this stuff. In addition, how did the hair get from Nanos' office to the Florida lab? I guarantee you the sheriff's office didn't fly it there. They probably FedExed it.
So you heard a little bit about what we were talking about. You were in the green room listening behind the scenes. Were we off on any of our analysis of some of these things that has taken place in this Nancy Guthrie fumbled investigation?
No. After Director Patel made these comments, obviously I got a lot of questions from media. So today I spent a large part of it kind of digging around, speaking with several of my members who were detectives, just asking them kind of what their perception was. And, I need to preface this by saying that no one knows, what conversations happened between the upper tier of command and the FBI. So this is only from the detective's perspective. And after speaking with them, I kind of have drawn the conclusion that I think what Director Patel is talking about was a perception from their point of view, but it was a perception born out of the wrong information. And what I mean by that is, the FBI probably felt boxed out because they weren't given information about the investigation, even though they were willing to help. What was described to me by the detectives that I spoke with today was that it was described as a, quote, shit show inside the CID unit in the days following the incident. Units were not even talking to each other. There was no command keeping track really of what's going on. And for example, on numerous occasions, they were told to drop everything and go speak with a witness or a neighbor or somebody. And they would do it and get out there only to find that this person had already been spoken to by 4 or 5 detectives. And so I think what happened is if the information isn't even being shared from unit to unit inside your own agency on the same floor of the same building, what hope was there to give good information to another agency offering to help? And so this is my opinion after speaking with several detectives today. What I think happened is the FBI knew that the sheriff was no fan of them and took the complete lack of information about the investigation as that we were boxing them out, when in reality it was leadership incompetence that should have never happened. That's what I believe.
Interesting.
And your description of a shit show, we're familiar with that because, no department is exempt from that. And it's a familiar tune to us, but Thank God it doesn't happen that often. But in a case like this, time is really important. When you have things like that going on behind the scenes, it's discouraging. And for the FBI, when they see that, they're a quick shutdown anyway. This is not something that's breaking news. The sheriff has a history. You know the drill. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get all things DutyRon. And this guy, my partner in crime, Ed Wallace, when we go live or upload another video,